Welcome, Travis Lawrence here with Arrow ECS. Today we're going to take a look at the vRealize optimization assessment and more specifically how to install the canned reports in that assessment to make it easier for your technical team to work with partners and provide the assessment reports. So if you're familiar with the VOA, we've done videos in the past on the overall installation process. So this is really a granular piece of that because we've got a lot of questions from reseller partners about how do we install those reports? How do we make this easier? How do we kind of reduce that heavy lift that is the cut and paste of the VROps object into a Word template or a PowerPoint template? VMware really provides you a way to install reports and then to spit those out of vRops natively. So we'll take a look at that, where we get the different resources and those different parts and pieces. So first off here, a few housekeeping items. Again, this video is not going to particularly cover the installation of vRops or what the overall report is. I will touch on the fact that, again, the assessment really is, you should see our other videos if you're looking for more in-depth on those, but the assessment really is a way for us to do a 30-day review of a customer's environment and then to have some touch points within that reporting process to provide them feedback and sort of next action steps into how can we optimize our virtual environment. We often see, customers go and virtualize and continue to see the benefits of that, how easy it is to create a virtual machine and bring applications online and to help the business in that manner. But it also runs into different issues when we have maybe a 10-host cluster and we don't know how to manage performance anymore. So this is really a way to introduce them to vRops in over a short period of time, typically as a free assessment that you, an Arrow partner, would do and provide that. And ultimately, it's really about your input on the next action. So at the end, we may get a report, a nice, neat report from VMware, but there's a ton of information there. And I think for you, the value add is really the ability to take a few of those items, maybe 3 items out of that report and say, here's where we're going to focus. We're going to focus on optimizing your virtual machine sizing. So we right size those VMs and gain back some of your resources. And now we have budget and we have compute and memory and storage resources available for other projects, or we kind of alleviate some of the issues that you have. So first off, what we're going to be doing in this scenario is really installing a PAC file in vRealize Operations 6.0 to provide those reports. So first we need to be able to actually download that PAC file. So you do need to be a VMware partner to have access to that file. So to get that, we obviously log into Partner Central. And typically the way we do this is logging on to vmware.com/go/vSphere optimization. Though recently I found that VMware has kind of changed the site a bit, and when I redirect that link, it directs me here to the main page and doesn't provide a sign-on link. So again, reach out to me, tlawrence@arrow.com, if you have questions, if you're not able to do that. But there is another way to actually access this information that I found. So once you've logged into Partner Central, you can log in the main page the normal way that you usually do. And we can go to Partner University. This is kind of the backdoor way that we would find into here, because I typically find that the optimization link doesn't work as we kind of expect. So we go there and then to Partner Individual, vSphere optimization at VOA training. And kind of as an aside, for you partners that aren't familiar with the overall process, aside from the videos that we provide, you can go through the VTSP and VSP sections of VOA. VMware's recently released those. So that's a good way to get familiar what the overall process is, what kind of the value is, to see if it really fits within your business. But once we're here at the VOA training section, we can click on vSphere Optimization Assessment VOA. And that brings us to the overall VOA page. It always seems to have this strange kind of border, no matter what browser I use. It seems to cut it off a bit. But this is where we can find more information about, if you're in sales, how do we kind of kick off the process and engage? How do we install? And then how do we show and sell? Ultimately, install the product, show the end results to C-level management or maybe technical management, and then selling vRops, turning this from a sort of free 30-day assessment into services, into vRops licensing sale. So for the purpose of this video, though, the PAC file, sometimes, again, it's hard to find. So this is sort of the path to that. Once we get into this page, we can go to Technical Resource Kit product version 6.x. And that'll take us into the Salesforce portion of of Partner Central that allows us to download an entire kind of kit, which is good for technical members of your team. And what that looks like is it'll provide us this VOA technical resource kit. In particular, what we're looking for, if we drill down into this enough, is VOA product reports, and then they have some sample reports, but we're looking for the importing VOA reports in vRops presentation and PAC file. So it's kind of a mouthful, but in here will be the latest version, hopefully, if you're looking in the right part on Partner Central, of the PAC file, so the VOA reports PAC file. And it also gives you a good PowerPoint document that will review at a very high level of what we're going through in this process today, and kind of see what that portion looks like. So if you don't want to go through this whole video and you need review, once you've got this piece here, it shows us where we can plug in that PAC file. But let's take a look at actually what that looks like in an environment. So once we've got vRealize operations up and running, we just need to log in, obviously log into our environment. So we log into our vRops environment, and again, we're focusing on the PAC file here, but we should bring up the dashboard. We've got some nice different dashboard features in vRops 6.0. But from here, we can go to Administration, which takes us to the Solutions tab. And then from here, on that Solutions tab, there's a green plus that says Add. So once we've got our PAC file, this allows us to really add that solution in. So this is a pretty simple process. As I mentioned, a lot of the legwork is really trying to find the PAC file on Partner Central, so at least we've gotten through that. Again, if you have questions, please reach out to me, and we'll get you through that piece. But from there, we can browse to the PAC file and just simply add it into the environment. So here, this happens to be, in this lab, it happens to be a version 2 file, so we select that and click Open. And we can upload that. Now, again, with the versioning piece of this, depending on which version you find on Partner Central, VMware from time to time will hopefully update this, provide a little bit more functionality if they find different ways to run the assessment or sort of re-architect that reporting structure. So if we have older installations existing in our environment, so maybe we've had the customer run this once and then they run it, we're going to run it again a year later on new pieces of the infrastructure, we can do a force installation. So this is basically just going to overwrite that existing PAC file. Also, once you select that option, it gives us the option to reset the out-of-box content. So if we've done this previously, we can check that and sort of say we want to start fresh. We want new data in this report. Since this is a lab, I'm going to do both of those. Typically in a clean installation, again, if this is a new 30-day assessment, the customer's never had vRops at all, then we don't necessarily need to do those pieces. But once we've got the PAC file selected and we've chosen our options, we can select Upload. And this part doesn't take too long. We can see, again, which piece is uploaded and which version. Obviously, VMware uses the PAC file to upload other types of modules, again, for sort of storage integration, other third-party integrations. So then we simply click Next. As always, accept a licensing agreement. Read it as you wish. And this will go through the installation process. So this part actually takes a few minutes to complete. Obviously, no action is needed. It's really applying that PAC file to the vRops environment. So we'll wait as that portion goes on. But kind of while that goes on, again, the VOA is really a good 30-day assessment, a way for us to get more visibility into a customer environment. We're always talking about the virtualization journey. We're going from, an on-premises deployment, maybe even from physical servers to virtual servers, and then from there, where does the customer go? So really see vRops and possibly the VOA as a way to continue on that virtualization journey from a physical environment or maybe a mostly virtualized environment to an on-premises cloud, or maybe a hybrid cloud environment where we've got on-premises infrastructure and stretching out into vCloud Air or into some of these other solutions that VMware provides. So this is really a good way to provide a free 30-day assessment, to check in with the customer, help them with the installation of the VOA, and run one of the initial reports day one, and then to check back in a few weeks and look at some of the things like performance and stress in the environment, and then be able to, again, touch base and uncover some other opportunities within that environment. And then to finally come back in a third touch point to talk with management executives and the technical team to show them the overall value. And again, I think that point is the best, where we look at the overall optimization. Maybe VM density in the virtual environment. What does it look like for us to, how many VMs per host do we have? How full are our data stores? Are we right-sizing virtual machines? And so many times I think we've seen, we have recommendations from Oracle or a specific software manufacturer on this is what a physical system should look like. Maybe even this is what a virtual system should look like, but those VMs are oversized, and this tool can really help us with that assessment piece. So now that this piece is finished, we obviously select Finish. And from here, we can go into the reporting piece. So there, if we look up at this sort of little book type icon, notebook type icon says Content, we select that, and then we can go to Reports. Now, obviously, if you're familiar with vRops, there's a bunch of reports that are included by default. But if we've installed the PAC file, we can see that these VOA reports are now included. And as I mentioned, in some of the other longer form videos, we talk about what each of these are. But at a high level, phase one is really that initial day one assessment. So we can look at things like high availability, DRS settings, cluster-wide settings, best practices for SSH, and what VMware best practices are enabled or not enabled. Maybe something that we can select and correct on that first day. Part two is really performance reporting. So again, stress, health of virtual machines, hosts, and what have you. A good touch point that you can come back maybe 2 weeks into the operation and talk with those customers about that. Again, you can really mold this to however you want as an assessment. There's a variety of ways that we discussed that you can leverage this in an environment. Maybe it's all remote. Maybe you have several remote customers and you want to do this as a remote assessment, and you can log in and talk with them that way. It is best usually is that final report. I think face-to-face really kind of brings it home as far as impact goes. But there's a variety of ways we can do that. We've also seen scenarios where we as Arrow can help you, bring in 10 or 12 customers and show them how to install it. Maybe they VPN into their environment and kind of do a training and implementation. That really allows you to kind of use a shotgun approach and have them install, make sure it's installed correctly, and then be able to catch up maybe 2 weeks or maybe 30 days later and do that assessment piece. And we don't have to go out one by one, either remotely or locally, and install those different pieces. But performance reporting is phase two, and then three is capacity reporting. Again, I kind of talked about optimization of hosts, VMs, a variety of information. Again, this spits out a lot of information. I think it's important to focus on, at the end, choose your top three and go to your customer there and say, here's our action items, here's what I recommend. But let's run a report. So again, if this is day one and we're ready to run a report, we've installed vRops, we simply select the report and we select this little notebook run template icon. So notebook with a play icon. And each report doesn't take too long to run, though we do have to select the object within the vSphere infrastructure. So that meaning, again, depending on the environment, if this is an assessment, do we want to run this on the entire environment? Many environments have different clusters, different vCenter servers, different data centers. Where do we want to run this? The more data, usually the better, because then we can uncover more objects, more places we can take action. But it really does depend on the customer's preference and your recommendation. So in this case, we're just going to select vSphere World, which is a vRops specific object for everything that it has visibility into. From there, we just clicked OK, and the report starts to run. If we want to kind of see how that is progressing, we can select Generate Reports, Generated Reports, and we can see processing. As always with the web client, if you're familiar, it's always helpful to refresh if you're trying to wait on a task. It's kind of the nature of this particular Flash-based web client. So this does take a minute or two to run, and it will take longer depending on the size of the environment and the amount of data it's going to gather. And then I don't know if I touched on the consolidated assessment report. This is really these three reports in one. So that's the one you're ultimately going to provide to the customer as that overall view of the environment. Each of these do, as we'll see, we'll look at the samples here, they don't only include the data, but they include some information about what the VOA is and what the phases are of that. So we can see here a few things. So now we see that the report is actually completed. We can see which object it was run on, who ran it, and the name of that. Again, so if you're running different reports at different times, it's nice to have visibility into some of that information. Also, we can download the PDF version, which is what you're going to use most of the time because it's formatted more nicely and it includes some of the other information. But if you want to pull down the data and actually manipulate it, we can download that in CSV as well. So either of those are available to the customer. Now, as part of this, I'll show let's take a look at a report. The report that's generated here in the lab environment doesn't actually have a lot of data in it. So let's look at some sample reports that we have here within the environment. So I'll pull open the final version. And all this does is actually aggregate all those reports together in sort of a reverse order. So if we have the configuration report, and then we run the performance report, and then we run the final optimization report, this shows those in reverse order again, because I think VMware agrees that the value is in the optimization first, and then we kind of drill backwards down into those configuration settings and other different settings. But this is sort of the format of the report. Again, we won't go through this in detail, but if you look at the PDF version, it talks a little bit about what this is, just a sort of title slide, and then really what is the process. So assessing configuration health is report 1, performance bottlenecks is report 2, and capacity utilization is report 3. Now that's not to say there's no manual tasks required. We don't need to necessarily run these at day 1, day 15, and day 30. Obviously vRops is collecting the data. We run these as needed. Actually, some of them become more accurate as we go along. Configuration, not as much, because it either is configured correctly or it isn't. But the other pieces, as vRops collects more data, becomes more accurate. That's why the capacity piece is last, because we need about 21 days of data to get that minimal piece of it. But this provides a good overview for the customer as to what this report is, and then as we look down, it gives us a little bit more information about what each of those means. And then ultimately, again, in some of the longer form videos, we go through more of what the report value is, but it's nice to see, we get pie graphs on certain different pieces of the environment. Let's take a look at something that has some valuable data and kind of show you what that looks like. So a lot of these are ones, so DRS is on or it is not, a lot of the configuration pieces, but we do get some granular data as well. So hardware summary or virtual hardware summary, what does each VM have? Sometimes even these simple items, even if VOA is not sort of raising his hand and saying this is a problem, if you go, oh, if you're an administrator and you realize, well, this VM has 16 gigs of memory, I didn't know it had that much, how did it get there? It kind of uncovers a lot of those different pieces. Things like operating system distribution, some of those basic features. But I think the capacity report here is probably the most valuable. So how much capacity do we have remaining in specific vCenter server instances? Time remaining. So if we have a host that says, it's going to run out of a specific resource within 90 days, do we need to procure additional resources, additional memory, additional hosts, what have you? VMs that are powered off. So you can see a lot of this is really valuable. Again, my recommendation to you is pick those highlights, pick those action items before you go into that final meeting and say, here's the value we see out of this. Let's take action on these. This is the services we can provide to really help you with that. So I hope this has been beneficial. Again, a lot of this is somewhat intuitive once you see how to install the PAC file. It's just bringing it all together, finding that information, finding where things are. Sometimes on Partner Central is really where we can bring value as Arrow. If we've gone through this assessment before and understand the parts and pieces and how to pull down that latest version, it's really about optimizing your business and the way that you can bring an assessment to a customer and make it easy. So we don't have to be concerned about how do we do this? Where do we get the information? We can get up and running quickly and provide value. So hopefully this is beneficial. Again, please reach out to me, Travis Lawrence, tlawrence@arrow.com if you have any additional questions, and we're glad to help. Thanks for joining us.